Koka sunarai sunarayanti. 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 Koka sunarai sunarayanti.
Hello guys, welcome back to this new episode of the Psychedelic Confessions. Today I'm very grateful to have a real, truly an expert, Tricia Eastman. She's kindly accepted to talk openly about her psychedelic experience. For people that didn't check her previous episode with us, I recommend you do that first, but you don't have to. And for people that are here without listening to the first episode, I will read the bio again. Eastman is a medicine woman, author, artist, speaker, and advocate for the psychedelic movement and founder of the non-profit Ancestral Heart. Eastman has created a wellness retreat center with thermal hot spring under construction in San Miguel Island called Who in the Azores, to open in 2024. Eastman books, Seeding Consciousness, Plant Medicine, Ancestral Wisdom, and The Path to Transcendence is coming out in 2023. As a medicine woman, Eastman has curated retreats in countries where use is legal, working 5-MeO-DMT and Iboga for 8 years. She has been initiated into multiple branches of Bwiti, the ancestral tradition from Equatorial Africa, working with Iboga, as well as facilitated the psychospiritual program with Ibogaine and 5-MeO-DMT at Crossroads Treatment Center in Mexico. Welcome back, Tricia.
So honored to be here. Thank you so much, Giancarlo.
Yeah, I'm very grateful about people that accept to come on the Psychedelic Confessions because, it is private stuff. It's private matter. And usually, not everybody's comfortable with vulnerability. But Tricia is. And also vulnerability, as we know, is a very, very powerful energy for healing. Thank you for being back. So, as usual, we'd go with a list of medicine, not in any specific order. And yeah, you can tell me how was for you the first experience or the most meaningful experience. Let's start with MDMA.
MDMA was something I started working with when I was in early high school and through my 20s. And I never really thought of it as something as a healing medicine because I was taking it at raves and, getting crazy. And I had this experience where I had a traumatic brain injury I was 27 when it happened. And I had taken like a hiatus from psychedelic work because of mental illness that my father was suffering and was afraid of, dipping my toes back in that water. And I, out of desperation, went to the MDMA thinking that it could help me. And had this profound mystical experience that brought me into the truth of what my real suffering was. It wasn't the head injury. It wasn't anxiety. It wasn't. It was me not actually following my soul's calling. So I literally. And, this is funny because now, I talk a lot about psychedelic integration. And, one of the things we warn people is don't make any major life decisions for 30 days because you just want to wait for the dust to settle and kind of have a little bit more clarity before you break up with your wife or whatever. Well, I left my husband. I had 4 houses. I had, a lot of material possessions. And I kind of had this moment oh, I don't need any of this stuff, and I just need to go find my soul. So I went to Europe for several months and did many different spiritual practices, was studying Kundalini, doing Vipassana yoga, doing different forms of meditation, really trying to understand who I was and what my purpose is. Really, the MDMA was the catalyst, which in essence, what I understood from, some of the books that I was reading, was like this Kundalini awakening, which is this understanding of like this vital soul energy that lives in you that was in essence, you know, awakening a part of myself that was my true power. And I have MDMA to thank for that.
Amazing. It's funny because MDMA was legal in Dallas in the 80s for a while, right?
Yeah.
And couple therapies was using it to prescribe to couple, and they were saying, don't do anything crazy the next few weeks after having taken. And that's exactly what you did, right? But you never regret it.
I didn't regret it. I mean, it did take me time to kind of actually like leave my husband. I think it was a couple months after the experience, but I had already made the decision right after the journey. I was like, I've got to go find myself. I've got to do this.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I credit MDMA, among other things, of course, to keep my marriage together for 15 years because it really helps in looking at the situation from the other person's point of view. Yeah. It's incredible.
Yeah, it's interesting with MDMA, you know, it's one of the medicines that doesn't completely, you know, take you off of the default mode network. So it doesn't dissolve the ego. But I think with people who have trauma, it's a very safe place to start. And I've even found myself coming back to MDMA in later years that it's really integrative for other psychedelic experiences. So I've had difficult things from initiations that I've had to face with Iboga, and then I worked with MDMA, and it kind of integrated those pieces. So I feel like it is a very integrative medicine.
Beautiful. And I want to take this opportunity for a big shout out to my friend Rick Dublin, who has devoted his life to legalize MDMA, and now we are on the last phase of FDA approval. Hopefully, MDMA will be able to be purchased by practitioner as a medicine next year.
Yeah, it's so incredible.
Ayahuasca.
Yeah, so I met ayahuasca. I read this book, Plant Spirit Medicine, and I can't remember the name of the author. And it talked about all these plants and the spirits. And this was back in, I think, like 2009. And interestingly, you know, I had this awakening with the MDMA that had called me to find my true self. And in that process, I met my soul tribe. You know, a lot of them were people going to Burning Man and into ayahuasca. And interestingly, met this group of people. And I always believe that, you know, unless something's truly a calling, I don't go like out seeking it. And so with the ayahuasca, literally I'm sitting at the table with this group of people who I just really was enamored by, because I felt like, wow, these people are, you know, like my soul tribe. And they said, yeah, there's this Colombian Taita who is in town and doing an ayahuasca ceremony. Would you like to come with us? And I had read about it happening in the jungles, and you know, was even maybe a little scared to make that trek to some strange place with people I don't know, because I didn't know anyone else who had worked with it. And so this felt like a safe entry point for me, although, like, you know, I know it's a little controversial thinking about, like, you know, how we're using medicines in the West and being respectful and all of that. But it was my, you know, entry point into the idea of ceremonial psychedelics. And I had this kind of idea before that, going to raves and, you know, using psychedelics in that way, that you know, that they're not for healing, that they, you know, this is your brain on drugs, and there's like the fried egg. And I feel like that ayahuasca ceremony turned everything upside down. There was still a lot of things that I didn't understand that happened in that journey now that I understand. And it would have been helpful to have like integration and preparation. But overall, I feel like what it left me with was this opening and a deeper sense of trust to continue on my path and continue the work with psychedelics.
Beautiful. Mushroom.
Psilocybin, man, I started doing psilocybin when I was, think 16 was the first time I did psilocybin. And the best thing about psilocybin for me was I could take a little amount, and because I had all this trauma when I was really young, I definitely had a fear of losing control. And so I could take a little bit of it, like a half a gram or a gram, and I would just get silly, like I would start laughing and it was just, it felt to me like it connected me with my joy, my innocence. And I definitely feel like it has incredible brain repair capacity, the ability of clearing the gut, which is deeply connected to the serotonin in the brain. So I think it's an incredible treatment for depression. And for myself, I feel like I definitely had, I suffered as a child with ADHD and learned later in life that, I was a little bit on the autistic spectrum. And I feel like my work with plant medicines and even just the calling to go do MDMA at a rave was me self-medicating, was me, in essence, seeking something that was going to heal, maybe unconsciously without knowing it. And I do feel like each time, even if it was, more in play and more not with that conscious container of intention and ceremony, that it helped my brain get to a step further where I could really get clear and interact with life in a more healthy way.
Beautiful. But so if in terms of spirit, like Graham Hancock says that every medicine has a specific spirit and every spirit has a specific personality, what would be the personality of the psilocybin spirit?
In Mexico, so my ancestors are mestiza, and it's definitely a medicine of Mexico. They call it todos niños, which is little saints. And so the mushrooms are little children. They're like I think about like the little toadstool in the Mario Brothers, like this little kid that's super cute and fun and joyful. And that doesn't necessarily mean that, the shadow aspect, which is, usually when you take like a heroic dose with the ego death, that's definitely not the feeling of a child, but after you enter that point into the mystical, I feel like it really connects you to the child within yourself.
Beautiful. San Pedro,
I was first introduced to San Pedro in 2015. And I remember, this was actually my second journey with San Pedro, but I remember being in Mount Shasta with a Colombian medicine man, and he served us right under the stars, and it was snowing, it was cold, we were all warm by the fire. And what I really felt that the San Pedro did was it connected us as one heart. So it was almost like there was a blanket around us, even though it was cold and snowy. I just felt like this sacred connection. To me, like San Pedro and peyote as well, and obviously speaking to the respect of the indigenous tribes and the sustainability sensitivities around peyote. But what I notice with both of those medicines is, kind of this greater connection to humanity and the human heart, and how that connects to the cosmos, and really the ceremonial aspects of San Pedro passing around sometimes the medicine drum. It depends on the tradition, because there's many different ways of working with the medicine, but very common also in peyote, in different ceremony. There's this idea of kind of passing around the, I don't want to use the word, I'll call it sharing, because it's not like you necessarily become the shaman in the ceremony, but you are passed, kind of the talking stick. And in that, you can share song, you can share whatever's, useful for the group. And I feel like the medicine just kind of allows each person to see that they can be a conduit for spirit. And it's really like when you get the ego out of the way, that things beyond you that you could never even imagine, like come through you. And that is the gift of the medicine. It's like when you feel something come through you that is beyond you, and it's a power like no other, but it doesn't belong to you, and it is you, but it isn't you. That is truly the gift of the medicine.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Let's try to unpack that a little bit. Why is that? Because you feel, you go beyond your personal problem and you feel a vessel for the greater good.
Yeah. I mean, in like a traditional, there is no set rules, but in general, in the ceremony, when, the fire is set up. And for example, in peyote, there's a very specific direction that you walk around the fire. And there's specific rules of how you connect with the fire, how you connect with the medicine. And in some traditions, what songs you sing and when you sing them, if you are aware of those songs. And people are obviously encouraged to learn the songs in an indigenous sense. That's part of it, is you're required to participate, and all of the work that I've done with both medicines have been very participatory type work, like versus with ayahuasca, typically you're laying down on a mat, you're in your own world, you're traveling off somewhere, you're sitting up straight no matter how high you are. You get scolded if you don't. You're connected with the fire. You're supposed to be connected to the fire because that's protecting you, that's helping you burn away whatever you're releasing. And in that kind of alchemical formula and the group heart, that's what kind of creates the vessel for that to come through.
Nice. Beautiful. You're so knowledgeable about all this medicine. CBDV.
So CBD is one of my favorite medicines. Cannabis really, truly is another miracle of nature, in that there are, so many different cannabinoids that are being studied for different treatments. CBDV is really interesting because it's a version of CBD that specifically works. There's been tons of research on the brain effects on children with autism. And so I feel like anyone who has neurodivergence, it can really help kind of subside some of the side effects, and kind of also help with anxiety, inflammation. A lot of, I think, brain conditions that people suffer from are also partially related to brain inflammation. And then there's another one that I really love also. There's a company called Rare Cannabinoid Company, and this is the only company I've seen, maybe there's more now, that sell these particular types of CBD and THC. And THCV is a non-psychoactive version of THC that works on the body, but it has an energizing effect to the brain. So it actually is kind of like having a cup of coffee without the anxiety. And interestingly, they found that it also is effective with weight loss. So, most cannabis gives you the munchies. This one does the opposite. It makes you not want to eat as much. So people can use it for weight loss. You can use it for energizing the brain. And they're two of the miracles that live within cannabis and this beautiful plant.
There is so many wisdom in these plants. It's incredible.
Yeah.
And what about cannabis in general? It's a bit of a tricky plant. Again, Graham Hancock says that the spirit of cannabis is the trickster spirit.
Oh, yeah.
Because it gives you the illusion that it reduces your anxiety.
Yeah.
But the reality is that the origin of that anxiety is the withdrawal from the cannabis.
Yeah.
Do you agree? What was your personal experience with cannabis when you were a teenager?
Yeah, for me, I actually had some genetic testing done because it was cannabis that activated my father's schizophrenia. He grew weed, so I remember, like, my father didn't raise me, but when I was a teenager and I would go to his house, there would be like all these beautiful cannabis plants in this greenhouse. And I remember the energy of it being very powerful. Like you could feel the ions from the plant. You would almost get high, off of the ions. And I think it is a very sacred plant. It's definitely a trickster. It has these hooks, where it hooks you into continually using it. And in some traditions, indigenous traditions, they believe that it can hamper consciousness. So you have to be really careful with it. In some ways, it can help enhance consciousness because, it can help you in small doses with specific things for healing. And if you look at all of the cannabinoids, each of those cannabinoids is working on different neurotransmitter systems and things. So it can be really beneficial. But I think what the problem with our cannabis, and I'll tell you why we have a problem in our society with cannabis, is a couple things. One, it's disconnected from nature because they grow it in pots under lights. And it's the alchemy with nature that makes the plant healthy. It becomes an overly feminized plant because it's grown only with feminine plants. So it's out of balance. And if you smoke an out of balance plant or ingest an out of balance plant, it's going to put you out of balance as well. And then I think the other thing is that the concentrations of THC and other, psychoactive aspects of the plant have really been genetically hybridized to the point that I don't think it's actually very healthy. And I think, some of these different products, such as the dabs and things like that, really it's kind of like the crack of marijuana. And so it's not good for the brain. It's the way it's working on the body isn't creating balance or like supporting the body. It's actually creating imbalance. So, what I'd love to see in the future is, more holistic ways of looking at working with marijuana. And then I think just like really expanding our knowledge base on this plant so that we can know which, like the difference between a sativa and an indica. One is amplifying and energizing, one is more relaxing and, more like journey medicine. And there's a lot of, like in Colorado, especially, but other places where cannabis is legal, there are therapists that are doing psychedelic assisted therapy with cannabis. And I think it could be a powerful avenue with the right wisdom and knowledge and understanding.
Yeah, absolutely. And then there is a group in California, I heard they use it as a sacrament. They do like only on Sunday in a sacred environment.
Wow.
And also in one of these coffee shops in Colorado, you see that it's really designed for people to get fucked up.
Yeah.
There's the degree, it's only the degree of THC. There's almost nothing.
Yeah.
CBD. And as you say, there is, I don't know how many active components, like hundreds that have not even been completely analyzed and discovered. So, we integrate the plant in the capitalistic model of maximizing sales, and that's what people want buy. But I wish that, with legalization, there's going to be more research.
Yeah. I want to add something that I think is really important. Cannabis is a beautiful plant that has, in essence, become a prisoner of capitalism. And that container has created, it's kind of like the same aspect of the feminine and being repressed and not really being able to live in her true power. But I feel the same is for tobacco. Tobacco is one of the most sacred plants used in, almost every lineage and every tradition. And tobacco as a medicine is incredible. Nicotine is being used as a nootropic. It's not addictive. I can tell you from experience, and I can tell you from other people that I know that have worked for it. And it's incredible medicine for ADD, for post-COVID brain fog.
Ingested, right? Also,
even just a nicotine gum. Like I use this gum called Lucy, and you can buy it in like a 2 milligram dosage or 4 milligram, which the 4 milligram is a little intense. But there's been some really incredible podcasts with Andrew Huberman of Huberman Labs of Stanford, and he talks about how smoking tobacco or vaping tobacco is harmful and how it affects the body, like, from that perspective. But he says ingesting it, like even in the form of gum, actually increases athletic performance and brain performance. So, again, a very, very misunderstood medicine. And it's crazy because you think about all these high school kids that are, trying to vape and smoke, and really, I think they're just self-medicating. And it's like, I feel like the medications that are out there, for example, Ritalin, it's like the Windows 98 of medicines. It's been around forever. We need upgrades. We need new forms of nootropics and things, and to really understand the chemistry of the brain. And that's why, these young people are getting into unhealthy habits with things that should be medicine.
Yeah, beautiful. And tobacco, for sure, it's a master plant. They say it's the father of ayahuasca. There is very powerful ceremony when you drink liters and liters of water with tobacco, which has been very transformative for a lot of friends of mine. So we cover a little bit 5-MeO on our previous episode, but for people that didn't listen to that one, and maybe let's go a little bit more on your personal journey. When was your first time? When did you lose the 5-MeO virginity, and how was it?
I never imagined that there was even a medicine that could exist. To me, there's, if you think about like this, family of all the plant medicines, and if you looked at it kind of like a tree, like within that tree, you would have the top of the Christmas tree is 5-MeO, and the bottom of it is Iboga. It's like Iboga is like the roots of the tree, working on the root chakra, working on presence, grounding.
Beautiful.
And then 5-MeO is like the opposite.
The crown chakra.
Dissolution, and you need both to heal. And so what I find with 5-MeO DMT is that it really helps, really the core of all addiction, really the core of all trauma is feeling that we're not safe, that we And in essence, it's kind of like the story of Adam and Eve getting kicked out of the Garden of Eden. It's like, I'm not supported, I'm not safe. But the minute you have that full disillusion experience in the way I experienced it, which was under a beautiful oak tree in this like dried up riverbed that was in nature, and the sun was like sparkling through, the branches as I was returning. But really, it's like just this deep trust in life, that the design is perfect, that, we're here to learn. This is a school, and we're just learning how to like completely let go, how to be in complete surrender, and really just how to stay connected to love all the time. And that's the beauty of 5-MeO DMT, is it teaches all of those things. It's just very fast. And, I think if you don't have any background in any kind of lineage of, mystical or esoteric teachings or, any kind of spiritual practices, it's going to be much harder
to
integrate.
Yeah.
Yeah, it can be very confusing.
Yeah. Beautiful. But so now that's a bit of a difficult question because it's such a case by case. But, if someone who has no experience with psychedelic, what would you recommend to approach the research with?
I think 5-MeO, I think MDMA, I apologize because you were just talking about it. MDMA is the best starting place because it's like this loving blanket of like safety and can kind of help you surrender and let go and kind of know what's under the hood before you open the container all the way, before you have that full ego dissolution. And then, I used to be a little negative on ketamine, but now I'm starting to see the value if it's done in a clinic with a really good reputation that's doing proper integration and proper preparation, that doing intermuscular ketamine can be a really good segue because it's a really safe environment. And, I have to say the underground network of what's happening in the psychedelic movement is the Wild West. And just to go in to some stranger and, have yourself basically torn apart, it can cause trauma to certain people. And so I think, that is a good opening place that's pretty, safe, obviously, doing your homework at any time to really make sure that you're working with the right people. And, San Pedro is such a lovely, gentle medicine as well. He's just a gentle grandfather. He's a master integrator, so he can really help you to integrate things without necessarily, depends on the dosage, because higher dosages, it can actually usually a psychedelic experience lasts anywhere from 6 to 8 hours with MDMA or psilocybin, how it metabolizes, and sometimes you take a booster to kind of extend it to 8 hours, usually an hour and a half in, another dosage that is usually half or less than the first dosage that you took. But if you take a high dosage of San Pedro, it can last up to 14 hours, kind of like LSD. LSD lasts for about 14 hours. So you just have to know that there's a possibility that it could have a long effect. And then also with the kind of coming down, because some people, get a little anxious about not being able to sleep at night or, the next day after the experience. If you have something that lasts that long, you just have to know, I might not go to sleep right away.
Yes. But so since you mentioned ketamine and it was not on my list, did you have a personal experience with ketamine?
I've had quite a few different experiences with ketamine, and it's interesting. So I've been, looking at right now the space that we're in the psychedelic renaissance is that we have psilocybin and MDMA coming up for legalization, probably next year-ish. We have Oregon, which has, and Colorado, which are going to be launching programs working with the plant. And then ketamine is legal everywhere. And so what things can we do in the U.S. that can have an impact on healing? And in doing that, I really discovered this incredible protocol, which is, has to be treated with a lot of care, but it's a combination of ketamine with deep somatic trauma body work. And typically it's done with troches, which are the lozenges, the ketamine lozenges, which is a little lighter than the intermuscular ketamine. And what I find is that it's a very beautiful, subtle way, because when you're working with trauma, you want to be in the body, you want to be with whatever's happening so you can face it, but it also kind of allows for enough of that surrender so that those things that are deeply locked in the body can kind of be moved around, and you don't necessarily close up when you're kind of releasing that I call them crystals of trauma. It's memories that are stored in the body, and we all have them. We all have trauma in our physical bodies.
Yeah, this is so important. As I mentioned, I'm a big fan of Gabor Mate compassionate inquiry protocol. And this is based mostly on somatic integration. Where do you feel? Using verbal therapy to identify the painful memory and the trauma, and then where do you feel in the body, and releasing from the body, and keep on checking with the body, and yeah, maybe the third millennium will be the wisdom of the body, which has been a little bit ignored.
Yes.
But for example, at WHO in the Azores, in your integration protocol, would you incorporating somatic therapy?
100%. It's the I would say the foundation of all of the work that I do on myself, and the thing that's really brought everything into integration. We, as a society, we neglect our bodies, and I am guilty. I just recently had a pretty significant injury, which I've never had an injury before. And a lot of it had to do with, not conditioning my body and, because when you work with medicine, you're sitting with people all day long, which is hard on the body, and you need to balance that with like physical activity, yoga, movement practice, ecstatic dance, and really in deep diving into the understanding of trauma, how it's trapped in the body. Movement is essential, whether it be through body work, deep, like I love rolfing, which is like a deep form of somatic body work that moves the fascia, and a lot of the trauma gets stored in those tissues. They say the issues are in the tissues. And what happens when you combine that with like low dose like ketamine, is it just kind of allows that stuff to kind of come out. And when you're integrating any experience, you don't necessarily need the ketamine. You can just do the somatic body work. And when you do this body work, what happens is all of the stuff that you kind of confronted in the journey, all of that is like stored as like acidity and maybe energy in the body, and the body work just kind of is the final sweep that gets the stuff out. So, you have people that you were talking about in the beginning that go to these ceremonies over and over again, and they're spiritually bypassed, and they keep coming back to the medicine, and they also keep having some of the same things coming up in their life. It's because they're not actually doing the full step process of preparation, integration, and then and in the integration, the proper embodiment practices.
Yeah. I like to call it the 4 Ps. The psychedelic assisted psychotherapy.
Yes.
And then the practice of embodiment.
Yes.
And sport and also Ben Greenfield, who's an expert on fitness, says that, okay, diet and movement is key, but then also our body is a battery, so also cold plunge and sauna and swimming in the sea and bare feet in the forest, so all this embodiment practice, including meditation. I call it an embodiment practice because you go out of your mind. And then the 3rd P is, passion. Find your passion, that then become a meaning, that then become a purpose.
Yes.
This is people, sometimes is a bit, people feel a bit intimidated because, oh my God, what's my purpose? But it doesn't have to start with purpose. It can only start with passion.
Yeah.
Where do you lose yourself? What are the activity that you feel that you channel something else, that time goes by?
Yeah.
And that can become your meaning. And then, like, who said that? The famous psychiatric, the meaning of life is to finding your gift, and the purpose is to give it away.
Yes.
So, but then, the psychedelic, the embodiment, the passion, the meaning, then all this is not enough if there is not the 4th P, which is people in community. Because that's, we are social animal. We prevailed on this planet because of our ability to communicate and interact. And when people say, oh, I don't care what other people think, it's like, it's just not true.
Yeah.
You do care what other people think. You should not care about people you do not respect, and people don't respect you. But on your peers, people that, from your tribes, it's important for you to have their respect and acknowledgement. And so, that's why I feel Ibiza is such a special place, because it really attracted a tribe with a certain sensibility, and there is so many opportunity to share meaningful moment here.
Yeah.
So, Trish, thank you so much. It has been incredible time together. Regarding the psychedelic confessions, all this medicine, you, I think, are one of the person with the most experience in this compound. A last few advice for our listeners.
Well, I would just say the what you shared last about people. I've never what a brilliant framework. I love it. And I'm going to write that down because I think it's something that should be included, and maybe I can quote you in our integration materials. I'm always updating them. But When you look at the idea of integration and the experience, the reason integration is important is because you don't actually know what's changed within yourself until the world reflects it back at you. And so the people is the most important part, because where your behaviors and where your
Is the mirror,
show up is in relationships. And so I really, I commend you for, I love your model. Thank you. And so I would just say, again, really this journey, I think there's so much in the spiritual space about independence and, becoming enlightened or, finding yourself. But that's all about you, as where, the people are us and we, and the way that this planet is going to evolve to its highest potential, which could happen with or without people, hopefully with people, but it's through us all connecting to each other and collaborating together and really sharing one heart.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. I feel like I don't want to let you go, but we'll do it again, and we maybe go deeper on more on the metaphysics and understanding, this archetypal energy for every plant. What you discuss about, the connection between FMEO with the crown chakra and Iboga with the root chakra, and maybe we can continue with this parallel and look at the psilocybin with the gut chakra, and I'd love to discuss more. You definitely have a encyclopedic knowledge, and your authenticity and passion and purest of intention comes through, as you know. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Koka sunarai sunarayente, 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 koka sunarai sunarayente.